They're gonna kill the love of my life.
Casey!
If I don't go back to what I was doing.
Our line of work is quite brutal and quite ruthless.
How far would you go for love?
You steal truck, bring it to me. Then you make your money.
Is it dangerous?
Of course it's dangerous!
Nicholas Hoult, Felicity Jones, with Ben Kingsley and Anthony Hopkins.
All this trouble, all this pain, for love.
Collide, now playing. Rated PG-13, may be inappropriate for children under 13.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. You have reached Venus Unplugged. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt. And what we do here at Venus Unplugged is we explore the archetype of Venus, the principle of love, whether it be in our personal life or certainly in our psyches, in our realities, in beauty, in art, you name it, we explore it. And that's what this is about. So here we are in the season of love, St. Valentine's. It actually had nothing to do with romantic love. St. Valentine was about acts of kindness. So that's very important to remember, acts of kindness. And most of all, acts of kindness to yourself. So sometimes at Valentine's, if someone doesn't have the stereotypical lover to bring flowers to or receive flowers from, people can get very, very depressed. So you really need to look at that. Why? Number one, it's not a holy day. I mean, it is a glorious day. I think every day should start with Venus, but I'm Venus possessed, so that's what I think. But what about those people that don't have that and will feel so bad that they do not have? So be kind to one another and smile at strangers, as long as they're not carrying a clock, of course, and be that love. Dance it and move it and feel it and let that live. Many people, in terms of romantic love, there's many, many different stages of love. I was looking at this exhaustive work. It's called it's a medieval book, and it's the A Treatise on Love Sickness. So in mid ages, and sometimes even now, we look at love as a sickness. They thought it was actually a sickness, and it's fascinating, some of the healing that they would have, but they felt that it was a melancholy. It was a erotic melancholy. Isn't that poetic? Of course, what they would do to the people was not very romantic, but love melancholy. It was a medical idea in the ancient world, or erotic melancholy was, or eros melancholy. So they felt that love was a mania. And sometimes we can see that. I mean, where we have a different attitude about love and different rights and belief systems and all that. But in medieval times, it definitely was considered an illness, that your heart, and yes, our heart can break and be reestablished again in a different way. And I think that's part of what one of the stages for, let's say, the love-weary times, or projected their stuff onto the wrong object, or, you can't help it. That's the danger of Eros. So Eros, that little, who's not so little, shoots his arrow, which is a projection onto somebody or within somebody, and bang, you're off and running. What Carl Jung, if he was analyzing or working with somebody, working with their dreams, if they fell in love, he would say, okay, come back to me in 6 months, because he just couldn't listen to the projection, how this person was the sun, the moon, and the stars and everything. He knew it was like, okay, here's this glorious moment, and love is real. I am in no way denouncing love. But when that romantic love happens, it's a mutual projection. It's still real, but you get all that what it is that you really want. I mean, you actually get a glimpse of your own soul. But beware when we want the other person to carry the burden of our soul. That's what usually takes place, and we don't realize it. We could step back a little and say, why? Love in principle, love as an archetype, certainly is the great transformer. But ordinary human love and the people that we love, the hardest thing, I think, is for people to accept the humanness. That person may not be capable of certain things, okay? Or they may not be even interested, or they don't even have that value. See, relationships usually work better if we have similar or mutual or complementary values. If you have completely different values, it's not going to work. The other person just looks at you like, what's with you? You know, I work on a farm. Why do you want silk and satin and fancy hats? I don't get it. Two different values. So with the love weary, I was working with a client of mine, and she was in and out of this relationship for several years, okay? But her commitment was to understand what happens to her because she would lose herself constantly. And so, of course, when you can lose yourself so easily in the fall, it is a fall, it's not an ascent. We fall in love. It's a drop of the ego. And there wasn't enough, when we first started to work together, there wasn't enough of her connection to her own psyche, to her own soul. So she would give it to anybody who was matching the projection. And then, of course, it was too much of a burden because, men know they're not gods. They really do. And the truth is, most men really, really do want to make the woman that they love happy. We have to help them as to how to do that, because they get lost on that. But she didn't project onto that. She was projecting onto other things. She was working other stuff out. And so when she realized what love was about for her, on a deeply, in a sense, esoteric and psychological level, was heartbreak. And it was about her heartbreaking so that she could start to understand what was going on inside of her. Now, consciously, she thought that it was all about I can't even say it, listen to me, fulfillment, happiness, union. And she kept on going in for more heartbreak because that wasn't what her soul wanted. Her soul wanted her to grow and was not going to allow mutual unconsciousness in a relationship. It wanted her love. So the soul is a very tricky component, aspect of us. It will go where angels wouldn't dare. It will get us into difficult human conditions for one thing only, so that we learn love. Another kind of love, not the romantic love. Because love is a very strange place to go to for safety, that energy. Because on one level, okay, so what happens in love? You fall in love, and the first thing that happens is you become extremely vulnerable. Such longing. Now, that vulnerability is also connected to what we felt as infants. We forgot all about that. So both things come up. Longing, the devouring, the wanting. My life depends on this. If I don't get this love from this person in this way, I'll perish. And yes, we're entitled to feel vulnerable, but that doesn't, people think, yeah, I of course I want to be vulnerable to this. I'm open to this, but I'm not infantile. And it's like, oh yeah, but look at the needs. Look at the longing, how deep and very times irrational. I mean, you can have a fit about something, or they didn't call it the exact moment, or whatever. I mean, that's the cry of the child. To be fed, to be held. If it's not in that moment, it means my life. And if it hasn't happened to you personally, it certainly has happened to some friends, where you've listened to the 4 o'clock in the morning phone call of the person who's so wounded. And very often the maternal, the compassion of one's heart is the only thing that soothes them. To get their heart broken by the man, but they come to their girlfriends to be nourished. What's that about? There's an instinct there. They opened to the vulnerability, but they also opened up to the last time they remember that vulnerability was when they were infants. So it gets all mixed up. And part of maturing in love is being able to recognize, oh, I get it. That's my little divine one who I have not nurtured and loved. And I want to dump my soul onto this person's life, this outer person. And that causes a lot of trouble. So when we're vulnerable to one another, when we fall in love, we're also vulnerable to their needs, to their moods, and we become more vulnerable to our own selves and our own needs, and things we didn't guess were inside of us will come up, and they'll come up with a vengeance. They'll come up so intensely, and it gets all mixed up. Just trying to figure out these levels, what Helen Luke talks about with levels, or my teachers would say, kind of circles within circles, or realms within realms. So your needs, those sweet unmet needs, we need to make conscious, so we're not dumping them on the person, and then they, or not even be able to articulate. Very often, a woman will say to a man, "But you hurt my feelings." But she doesn't tell them, or doesn't know for herself. Her feelings is what she values. So the man kind of goes around like, with three blind mice. He doesn't know what you're talking about. If you tell him the value that was offended, then he can fix it. But if it's just feelings can go on forever. And hurt feelings, they're hurt because there's still open wounds that we haven't resolved within ourselves. Or there's still the love you didn't get from a parent who possibly was so wounded, or doing the best they could have, but had no idea. That we burden a lot. Now, as children, of course, we do have, in principle, a right. But if the parent's sort of wounded or just out and out crazy, you're not going to get that. Then you're marked. Then that's your task in life is to bring that wholeness. Because if you're not getting it externally, and we can only get it to a degree, we've got to go in, right? because in the center of every archetype, in this case love, the archetype, the center of the archetype of love, is a god or a goddess. So it would be the Eros or Venus. And we're touching. Now, a god can't be bossed around or told what to do, or we need to understand its pathology, and we need to understand how it works within us. Some people that are into astrology will say, my Venus is in this, and therefore this is my pathology, which is great hints, okay, because that's important for us to understand. But love costing not less than everything. And very often what gets sacrificed in love is love itself, which is what all the great myths are about and fairy tales are about. This great sacrifice is always occurring. But in marriages, or any type of union, you think you're making sacrifices in the marriage, the union, but the ultimate sacrifice is love. You have to give up your notions of love, and that is what you give up, and then you do a different kind of love. Your idea of love, what you thought of love, what you can expect from love, what do you cling to as love, this is what you give up. And anyone who's spent more than 24 hours in love knows this. This is a constant sacrifice. And what are we sacrificing? The story we tell ourselves. It's one of the amazing things when you're grieving, whether it's a death or the end of a relationship, you can't tell yourself the same stories anymore. It ceases. You go to the land where you can't tell a story about yourself or what you see. Listen to the stories you tell yourself. The stories you tell yourself about yourself. Is it over and over again? Is it the victim, or is it the hero or the heroine? Or lovers get burned out. And in that burning, which is a very interesting image in alchemy, because it's a transcendent function. We burn away the dross matter, the bullshit, the lie. And I think that's why it does take a lifetime, if not several, to love. So all that stuff needs to be burned off. I've seen it time and time again, where the partner truly loves the other person, but they have a story about what love looks like, and they will not accept what the person has to offer, which will really work, but they won't give up the story because they're still in the experience of not getting, or of trauma. Trauma is very real. So this isn't just about meeting the right person, or you can meet many right people. There's more than one soulmate that comes into our life. But if we're not aware of the boo-boos, and we're not aware of our wounding, and we're not aware of the story we are telling ourselves again and again, we won't grow. And that's what it demands. Love demands that we transform, we transcend. Love isn't to make us happy. We go unconscious when we're happy. There's no growth. And we need periods of that. I'm all for the happy. I'm all for the let's go unconscious and make believe everything's fantastic, okay? But then psyche calls, if you're lucky. So that's the archetypal folly. And that's also what Eros does. Eros is Aphrodite's son, or Eros is also the energy, the principle of love that holds everything together. And one of the questions when I'm working with somebody is like, what would you do if you realized there was absolutely nothing wrong with you? That's just who you are, and work with what you've got. Because so often people feel that there's something wrong with them, or something's not right, or they're not getting what they want. Reality, there will always be unmet needs. That's the deal. You know, to the age of 7 is the age of reason. You know, pretty much if you haven't gotten, at least on that kind of infantile level, haven't gotten the needs met, you know, you're going to walk around with a bag of needs there. And the growth is to come to terms with, wow, well, that was an interesting first 7 years. Now I've got another 7 to go, always Saturn, okay? And what do I need to let go of here? Some people love you, some people don't. But the maturing of that is, well, what are you going to do with it? And the neediness, right? Now, if you're having a very young experience, you know, an infantile experience of needs, nobody knows how to fix that. Nobody knows how to, unless if you're a female and you want the male to mother you, then you're going to hate him because, A, he can't mother, he'll never be a good mother. That's not what men can do. They're on a different wavelength, right? And but you see it happen in relationships. Or a man needs a mother, so she does all the mothering, and your mother, your man, is not going to be sex. Because that's the dynamic that you're playing out. And none of it is wrong. It's just start to understand what is taking place. What are the stories you're telling one another, and how are you playing them out? And when we begin to realize, so often, and the wounding, there's a natural wounding. It doesn't, children grow and they leave the house. That's heartbreaking. You gave them life and hopefully an education, you gave, and they got to go. But see, what happens in any type of being lonely or heartbroken or even falling in love, because there are things we need to drop to follow the love. People don't realize that. So often, and it's natural, your friends are the first to go because you've fallen in love and you've gotten this special person and that's what you want to be with. And some of those friends come back and some of them don't. Or you drop them totally because you're going in that path. Some people get hurt and some people understand. So what Jung calls the transcendent function, that's when the soul kicks in. And it's like in loneliness, man seeks his inner nature. And Jung would agree with that, but I think he would turn the statement around. In loneliness, our inner nature seeks us. In loneliness, our inner nature seeks us. So even if we're going to apply that to this faux holy day called Valentine's, if you're feeling lonely, your inner nature is seeking you. Don't waste that opportunity. It's up, it's alive, it's active. Embrace it. Do ecstatic dancing. Give yourself a marvelous bath, or just do something that's deeply soothing and loving, and apologize to that part of you that is trying to connect to you, that you don't really want because you want that object of love. It's an object. It's not the soul that seeks you. So that's a way to give another branch to Valentine's. And actually, Valentine was about that. Saint Valentine was about acts of goodness, acts of kindness, with no concern about it coming back. And it certainly has gotten distorted. So if you're feeling lonely or a loneliness comes up, and you can even be with, there's nothing lonelier than being in a marriage that's not working. That's pretty lonely, okay? And it may not have anything to do with people. It's just this longing, or it's a loneliness. You don't know what it's about. It's a longing for an expression, a creative expression, or it is a longing to play. So give it as a day to Venus, which is about beauty and play and sensuous feelings, okay? In romantic love, our inner nature has been seeking us all along. First, it appears as the embodiment of the person of our beloved. But but initially we don't know our inner nature. Jung calls it the anima or the animus, but we find it in projected form. This is why when we meet with our beloved, it seems to be meant to be as if we were destined, fated, made in heaven. Our beloved seems complete and seems to complete us by bringing us into contact with our inner nature. And that inner nature of ours that has been neglected or ignored. But then, when the beloved leaves us, or we fall into a depression, we experience our aloneness as if for the first time. So, if it's a man and we're carrying his anima, we walk away from that. And he collapses. If it's the woman, the animus, we project our anima, and he walks away, and we die. No. Take back the gold. Don't fall for it. No. You can leave, but I'm taking my animus back, baby. But then we start to experience something as missing. See, at this moment, at Heartbreak, is the most profound moment of transformation. That is the it moment, baby. That's when something can really happen. And that's the beginning of the journey, or people will fall into melancholy, or what the ancients called love sickness, or erotic melancholy. They didn't understand. There was a whole volumes of debates about whether it was a physical phenomenon or a soul phenomenon and what would happen, and it's really quite interesting to read what the ancients thought of love sickness. And today, we look at it in a different way. And also today we have free will. Well, supposedly free will. But how much is free will if there's projection, right? It's really not any free will. We get to project, at least in this country, on what we want to project on. But it is the moment. So have a Valentine's Day for your anima or your animus. Experience that for the beloved. We want it from somebody else when all that our soul wants us is to connect with it. So if you don't have a projection or a love, then you should be doing it anyway, on your inner nature. Celebrate and have a Venusian day, a day of Venus, celebrating your inner nature. And then also your outer nature. So you can go on Facebook, you can go on Blog Talk Radio and listen to this and download other episodes on iTunes. You can go to my website, LloRaineNeithardt.com, or you can call for a session at 212-757-8914 and have a glorious inner and outer Valentine's. much, much love and gold. Bye-bye.
Progressive presents Mindflowness with Flo.
Before you lies a beautiful meadow. In that meadow, Progressive Direct has placed its auto insurance rates alongside those of competitors. You select the lowest rate and feel a great sense of calm. A great sense of...
Compare Progressive Direct rates with competitors' rates so you can rest easy. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy.